One should keep the consumer first, think what she wants to read, give her that interesting content. And hey, if you can make it an ad for your product, then that's just perfect.
Hi, before we get to this week's podcast, I'd like to tell you that Automated Creative are releasing a book called How to Make It in Marketing, Volume 1. It is a collection of the best marketing career advice we've had from over 200 episodes of the Shiny New Object podcast. You'll hear from some of the biggest, brightest and best names in the industry telling you how to grow your career. You can reserve yourself a copy at this URL. So get your pens out. It's bit.ly, so bit.ly/make it in marketing. So that's bit.ly/make it in marketing. But the make it in marketing bit is in capital letters. So bit.ly/lowercase and the rest is make it in marketing uppercase. I think you should get your heads around that and enjoy. It's a great read. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, and this is a weekly podcast about the future of the marketing and advertising industries. And I get to interview someone clever, famous, interesting, connected experiences, all of those different things. And this week is absolutely no different. I'm on a call with Dipta Chaudhuri, who is Vice President of Marketing at Bajaj Auto. Dipta, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you give them a bit of background?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm Dipta Chaudhuri. I look after marketing, all the marketing functions at Bajaj Auto, which is one of India's largest two-wheeler and three-wheeler company, and it is the world's most valuable two-wheeler and three-wheeler company. A little bit of background about what I have been doing. I have worked in multiple industries. In fact, whenever I have changed jobs, I have also ended up changing industries. So I worked in CPG, newspapers, digital media, EdTech, and now automobiles. So many of my marketing roles were about setting up of systems and processes, which is a common link. And hence, I have a bias towards doing new things. Towards shiny new objects, if you will. And on a personal note, I'm very interested in movies and pop culture. And that has led to me a very durable hobby. And I've ended up writing some 7 books on Indian cinema.
No way.
Yes.
That was your first. You're in 200 episodes. You are on your own in that qualification. So congratulations. So send the links over. I'll share them.
Absolutely. My LinkedIn headline says "Marketing by day, movies by night." That's absolutely true.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I like that. In the world of LinkedIn BS, I thought that was very honest. I enjoyed that. So you write books. I assume that must mean that you read books. But do you read marketing books, and do you have one that you can recommend?
Yes, I read a lot. Though Insta Reels takes up a lot of my time nowadays, eats up a lot of my time, I should say. So I read a lot. Not only marketing, all sorts of books. If I have to recommend a marketing book, I would recommend a very unusual book called Mother Pious Lady by a very popular advertising, marketing, and social understanding guru called Santosh Desai. He basically does a great job of demystifying how the old India, which is actually almost like a continent, how the habits and the mindsets and how the country literally is changing. So this is a book that I read some time back, and I often go back. And because India is so diverse, I recommend it a lot to people because I feel that it's about somebody who's growing up in a large city might be missing out many nuances of small town. Somebody who's grown up in the northern part of India maybe completely find the south of India alien, and so on and so forth, because India is almost like a continent, right? And I feel that this book gives a great insight into India's culture, how the Indian consumer behaves. Incidentally, there is nothing called Indian consumer. It's a very diverse, heterogeneous group of people. So in a series of short essays with a lot of humor, a lot of candor, Santosh Desai does a great job of demystifying India, and it is a book I recommend very often.
And can you pull out one or two things from that book for someone who isn't going to read it, who would like to get the benefit of having had read it? What were the standout points that you remember most often?
It talks a lot about, for example, the Indian woman customer, and how there is a very wide range of, how she sees various products. And there are certain stereotypes about the Indian consumer being very price conscious. The book does a great job of breaking that myth and says that actually it is value consciousness that the Indian and often the woman customer is looking for. So therefore, that's often an eye-opener, and that you see that if you are able to create a great price-value equation, the Indian customer is willing to pay a lot more than what she is usually given credit for. There are actually lots. And then again, you know how transport is changing in India, which is relevant for my current job, how eating habits are changing in India. How did, for example, instant noodle, a certain brand of instant noodles become extremely popular in India? So those are these very nice earthy nuggets that keep popping up throughout the book. And, more often than not, you would find something very relevant for your work, even if it is not directly connected to what you do.
So outside of the advice in that book, what is your top marketing tip? What's your silver bullet bit of marketing advice that you share with your teams or friends or connections?
Something that I keep saying a lot is that there is this quote which says that nobody reads ads. People read what generally interests them, and sometimes that is an ad. I think this is a very important tip which I keep repeating every once in a while, because we often we often make the mistake of thinking that the entire consumer is like almost waiting for our communication. They will engage, as it says, with the ad or the piece of communication or a social media a social media post or something as intently as we probably created it. So this quote, I think it's by Howard Gosage, who's this advertising maverick. It brings one down to earth, and it makes one wonder that, one should keep the consumer first, think what she wants to read, give her that interesting content, and hey, if you can make it an ad for your product, then that's just perfect.
I think you can replace the word ad for PowerPoint slide in that sentence as well.
Absolutely. You just hit the nail meat hammer kind of a thing.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we're going to talk about your shiny new object, which is one we haven't had before, and I respect this. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. But your shiny new object that you think represents the future of this industry is a whiteboard and marker. I know what those things are, but why is that your shiny new object?
I think I place a lot of weightage on creativity. The plain human creativity, if I may call it that, because nowadays we tend to get a bit distracted by these talks about algorithms and what Facebook pushes up and what Google pushes down. And we try to write content as a machine would perceive it as opposed to a human would perceive it. So I'm a great believer of that human talking to a human kind of creativity. And the best way to generate that creativity is with, I believe, with a whiteboard and marker. You could be alone, you could be in a group, you could keep throwing ideas at each other, and from which those collision or merger of ideas, more creative ideas emerge. And I think that what has happened in the last couple of years is that people are slowly realizing the value of this huddle around the whiteboard, where a group of people get together, that human interaction, they throw up some ideas, brainstorm, reject some of them, accept some of them, make them bigger, and then they may even go back to their respective homes and, to execute or fine tune those ideas. But I believe that when they come together and, around the whiteboard marker, it is that an old thing, but it has suddenly become shiny and new when we are now realizing the power of getting together and putting on one's thinking hats and doing some old-fashioned brainstorming.
So that's lovely. How do you know you're right? Like, what's your data point? And secondly, how do you do whiteboard and pen effectively? How do you do it well?
How do I know it's right? I think what I realized over the last few months that we have been back in office without any interruptions, touch wood for that, I have realized that people are increasingly seeing a balance, that they want some alone time where they do their uninterrupted thinking, but they also value bouncing off of ideas. So I see a much more animated set of discussions, a much more much higher frequency of ideas coming in, much higher frequency of ideas seeing the light of day when one is around a whiteboard and there are 3 or 4 people kind of discussing. So I think this newfound flexibility, newfound ideas, the ideas that we have taken to market in the last few months or so, that is my data point. That is what gives me confidence that this is something that will keep on giving us dividends. As a leader, what I would want to do is to keep this excitement fresh. Keep this excitement going, because let's say in another year's time, when we are slowly forgetting the impact of the pandemic, we shouldn't get to a position where we lose this excitement of brainstorming. So as a leader, my challenge would be to keep these ideas, that people pick up this marker and throw out their ideas, however silly they might seem at first glance. They should openly share it, because something bigger and better might emerge from that. So that's my challenge as a leader, so that I hope to keep this habit going.
And the other half of my question is, how do you do it well? So sure, it's easy to get a whiteboard and a pen for a few quid, and it's easy to get a room full of people, but it's easy to let the loudest voice or the highest paid person have most of the say. So what technique do you use to make that brainstorm session produce the goods?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. As it says, hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, often tends to steamroll something else. So what I personally do is that I encourage the whole process with a lot of silly ideas of my own. just to keep it going, so that people kind of start realizing that if we don't stop this Gen X guy, he might throw out more bad ideas, and we have to kind of stop him so they come up with nice ideas of their own.
Can you give me an example of a deliberately stupid idea that you've shared?
I'm now trying to struggle to remember which one of the dozens should I say without embarrassing myself.
Well, because I'm a big fan of a stupid idea from me, so I'm just kind of trying to work out to what lengths you go.
Can I pass? Because I'm.
Of course you can. Of course you can. So back to you said that what I hear is that you will throw some, as you say, Gen X ideas out there just to get the ball rolling, so people kind of then chip in and say, look, we've got to improve on this. What other techniques?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. What other techniques? I think the other technique includes a bit of a. Using some of the new age technology, etc., the fable thing called A/B testing, that often we reach a point where we say that, okay, we have only this much time and this much resource. Which of these two ideas should we try first? And my answer to that usually is, let's do both on a sort of scaled down version and run it both. Now we have enough technology now to kind of try out 2-3 different ideas and test them out and figure out which works best. So this is important so that somebody who's maybe a little less confident about his or her thoughts, by doing this, one can actually prove it to them that, you know what, you don't have to be underconfident about your thoughts, and because it did quite well in the real world.
And so what advice would you give to someone who embraces your shiny new object of whiteboard and marker? What advice would you give to someone who thinks that actually the best ideas come from a really creative person sat on their own in the period of contemplation?
I would recommend having no preconceived notion, as flat or as flat a ground as possible for everyone, the literal round table. So it is important for everybody to give an idea. Sometimes what happens is that a quote unquote creative person may have many ideas in the associated areas, whereas somebody who's coming from a different perspective or a different function or as a view of a different business is likely to come up with a more radical thing. So it's important to take that on. So as non-judgmental, as equal a footing that you can put everybody around the table, the better this shiny new object works.
Well, unfortunately, Dipta, we are at the end of the podcast, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. And I'm going to keep an eye on your work and see if I can spot something that came from an embarrassing Gen Xer or someone from the periphery with a radical idea. But if someone wants to get in touch with you about this or anything else, where is the best place to do that? And what kind of outreach message gets your attention?
What kind of outreach message? If they can say that what interests them or what connects me, that interest to me, that works usually the best. I am available both on LinkedIn as well as on Twitter. I have an unusual first name, and that is usually enough to find me on both these places. I'm usually talking more about movies on Twitter and a little more about marketing on LinkedIn as the two platforms demand.
Do they though? I'm not sure. I think LinkedIn is gonna go under a change. I think in the next few years. I think that
I hope so. Maybe it's time to do some A/B testing myself to see whether movies worked on LinkedIn and marketing works on Twitter.
Well, there's a guy, I can't remember he was a guest on the show. Duarte Garrido, who was at Coke, but now he's moved, and he uses like comic books, and that's his point of reference. He'll like pull a page out of like a Marvel comic and then about leadership or something like that, and then use that as the quote, and which I really like. It shows his personality a bit, but it lands the point in a different way. So Dipta, maybe we're going to see some Bollywood or Indian movie quotes to inspire the next generation of marketers.
Okay, now I have the problem of plenty. Earlier there were too many bad ones. Now there are too many good ones. So okay, I'll go with one which is very famous quote by Shah Rukh Khan, who's probably India's biggest star right now and for several years now. So he says that that every film must have an happy ending. And he follows it up by saying that if the ending isn't happy, it isn't the end. So, I think it's a great way of looking at life, universe, marketing campaigns, everything, that if it isn't happy, it isn't the end.
Wow, that's big. What a wonderful way to finish the show. Dipta, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom, for having me.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.